Welcome to Inside Scoop Live, the podcast where indie authors get personal, sharing insights about their books, their writing journeys, and their passions. I'm your host, Sherry Hoyt, and I invite you to join me for engaging conversations with both debut indie authors and seasoned veterans. Whether you're looking for your next great read or a bit of inspiration, you've come to the right place. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Sumie Filmer joins us today to talk about her book, Shattered Child. It's a powerful memoir about surviving trauma and reclaiming hope. Before we get started, here's the inside scoop on the author. Sumie Filmer is now in her early 50s and happily married to the man who changed her life. She and her husband live in Queensland, Australia, and together they have 2 adult children in their late 20s. Though her earlier years were marked by deep pain and sadness, and she continues to have difficult days, a diagnosis of complex PTSD and anxiety has given her clarity. It helped her understand that her thoughts and emotions are shaped by the trauma she experienced. Healing remains an ongoing process, but the unwavering support of her loving husband, close friends, and a dedicated therapist has played a significant role in her journey forward. Shattered Child is her writing debut. Learn more about Sumie Filmer at sumiefilmerauthor.com. Well, hi, Sumie. Welcome to Inside Scoop Live.
Hi.
Thank you for joining the show today. To get us started, give us a little background about your book. What is Shattered Child about, and what inspired you to write it?
Shattered Child's a memoir based on my early childhood and until I was 17 years old. It is about me as a Sri Lankan toddler being brought to Australia by white parents that were unable to take proper care of me, and which then they resorted to physical abuse and then eventually abandoned me into a children's home, into the Australian welfare system. And after a few months, I was adopted into a family that did eventually physically, emotionally, and sexually abuse me. I wrote this memoir to be a voice, to show strength, resilience, and hope that when things can be so bad, there is good, and there are good people in this world.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for writing it, because I feel like stories like yours, they really help so many people. One, you don't feel like you're alone anymore. And, I imagine it
Yeah,
was cathartic to write as well.
yeah,
That's probably painful too at times.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely was. Yeah.
Yeah. But thank you for writing your story. Yeah. So
No,
others can
thank you
benefit.
so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. Yeah.
So, a little bit about your early life and background. You described facing like food insecurities before you were adopted. How did your early experiences around hunger, but more importantly, survival, kind of shape your feelings about safety and trust as you were growing up?
So my experiences around hunger and survival had an impact on me throughout my younger life, especially the fear of not having enough to eat. It taught me to like savor the food, stretch out the food that I did have. For example, when I was younger, I'd receive something that I really loved, and so I would like make it last as long as I could, and I never wanted to run out of food. And so as an adult, I always like to make sure there's sufficient amount of food to feed my family. I never want them to feel the hunger like I did. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That kind of thing really stays with you. I mean, I haven't experienced that personally, but I know how, some things from childhood, they just stick with you. They're hard to shake. And when you see how deeply it affects someone, it makes sense to be really mindful and take steps to make sure that never happens again, like you did. Wow.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. So it's making sure there's always enough food in the cupboards and the fridge as well. Yeah, as
Yeah.
an adult. Yeah, yeah.
Now, in the beginning of the story, you shared you and your sister were together for a while in an adoptive household. Can you talk about what happened when she was removed and placed in a children's home, and what it was like when you got there and she was no longer there?
Well, so she was actually removed from the household first, from the first family, and placed into a home, and then eventually I was removed. And when I was put into the children's home, she was no longer there.
Mm.
So I was really alone in this world. I had nobody. My sister was like my lifeline at that time, and she was gone. So just that impact was isolation was a big thing.
And how old
Yeah.
were the two of you? Was she older?
So she's 2 years older than me. I was 6 when I actually had my seventh birthday in the children's home, and she wasn't there. So, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
she'd already been moved on to another family.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's gotta be hard just, because as the older sibling, she was your adult representative,
Yeah.
basically, even though she was a child herself. She was someone that you looked up to.
Yes,
Wow.
exactly.
Oh my
Exactly. Yeah.
goodness. So you were adopted and then you were abandoned by your first adoptive family. You described moving into another home. What did all those early transitions teach you about surviving uncertainty?
I didn't know that I was surviving. Do you know,
Mm,
that was just my life, and that's, how it was at the time. So, as a young child, you just don't really think about all those things, do you? As an adult, you do, but as a child, you just go with it. Yes, you're sad and you're lost, but you just survive. That's
yeah,
yeah. You have no comparisons. You have no concept.
that's right. Yeah,
Um,
you don't know what you don't know. Yeah.
Yes, yes, exactly. So I think for me at that time was just very lonely, not knowing who was going to love me.
Mm, wow. Oh, that gives me chills. It's heartbreaking. And I just keep going back to like, wow, the courage it must have taken you to write your book.
Yeah,
uh,
yes, I've done through a lot of tears.
Yeah, yeah. So how long did it take you to write your book? Like, what did that process look like?
So I actually started writing like many years ago before I had the kids, and then I stopped, raised the children, and then yeah, in the last few years picked it back up and just decided to needed to finish it after I did lose it for a little bit. I lost the book, it corrupted on a file,
Oh
and I
no.
had
Oh
to
no.
yes, it corrupted, and so I did find a little bit on a old laptop, so I managed to regain some of it, and then just continued on writing, and I finished it just over a year ago.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, so it's been a long process, but it was the right time to finish it as well.
What was it like picking it up again and going through those old files and notes that you had? What was that like?
It was just like, yeah, like I'm reading my life story. This is something I've carried with me, forever. So I guess it's just like, wow, yeah,
It
this
was
is big.
time.
It was time. It was a story that needed to be told, and obviously in this day and age where a lot of people, women and men are speaking out, it was the right time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's what I mentioned earlier. I mean, books like yours are so important.
Yeah,
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 absolutely.
exactly.
In the book, Shattered Child, you write about living with fear and the pressure to stay silent. What does that mean? How did you manage those feelings as a young girl?
Well, I didn't cope very well as a young girl. I did try to take my own life at the age of 12.
Mm,
But as a young girl, teenager, I just learnt to push those fears down. I internalized it until I was much older. And then, I did end up suffering a breakdown as an adult, but I had no choice then. I had to delve into and deal with my traumas of my childhood.
yeah,
So, yeah, yeah.
I imagine that took a lot of work. Oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I
It's
cannot
it's
imagine
still
actually. Yeah.
no, and it still takes a lot of work. Being proactive in my mental health.
Yes, yes,
It's a lot of work. Yeah.
yeah. It feels like trust is one of the major themes in your memoir. There are many themes. How has your understanding of trust evolved since those early betrayals?
So my trust has evolved by allowing only certain people into my space, and being open to new relationships when I feel comfortable and getting to know a person. I've always kept a certain amount of distance between me and males, though, especially ones I don't know very well. I'm very guarded, with men.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, you talk about some very difficult topics, and yet you also give us hope as the reader. for you and the story you're going through, and just hope in general. I
Mhm.
love how you show how the small things like school and activities and just those brief moments of independence helped you to survive. Was there a particular outlet or place that gave you a sense of relief or hope that was kind of your go-to?
Well, as a child, I think dancing and singing was my outlet. I could sing as loud as I'd want to, and that gave me that relief, that release. It allowed me to have a sense of, just, I think it gave me hope as well. Dancing, it was about movement, just moving around and feeling that freeness. And hope came so much later in my teenage years, and especially when I was no longer living at home. And also when I met my future husband. So, all those things, it gave me that strength and that whatever just to survive.
Yeah, yeah. I love how you turned to singing and dancing. I mean, that's representative of such freedom. I mean, to me, it kind of makes me wonder how I would handle that situation, if I were in your
Yeah,
shoes. And you chose to sing and dance, and those were your moments of peace. And
yeah.
so you never gave up on hope.
No, no. And I think, like with dancing, I don't dance as an adult. I might sing quite loudly in the car, but, but I don't dance. But it was definitely as a child, it was just that's that space. You've got your own space to dance in and just, yeah, just feel free.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's also a thread of resilience in you, obviously. How did you hold on to that spark? That resilience that along with that hope, even during the most difficult times.
Look, actually, I have no idea. I have no idea. I've really thought about that and that question. And it's a question my therapist asked me numerous times. And I think it's just hoping life would get better for me. And it has. So, yeah, it's been one of those things I've just had to keep moving on.
Yeah,
And I don't know where that came from, but it's something deep in me that's just keep moving forward.
yeah. There's that inner
Yeah,
strength.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Now, later in your story, you share a complex PTSD diagnosis. A little bit about that.
Mhm.
How did
Yeah.
finally putting a name to your experiences help you begin the healing process?
Being diagnosed with complex PTSD and learning what it meant was like a light bulb moment. Realizing all the things I felt and thought and verbalized were because of my traumatic childhood and learning that all of that was not my fault, but those that had let me down are they're the ones that hurt me, that how I viewed the world was because of what those people had done to me, had altered, how I viewed the outside world.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was definitely this light bulb. Oh, so this is why I've been like this. It was, yeah.
Yeah.
We only know that, PTSD is, for those that have gone through war and not realizing that, oh, actually, it can happen to everyday people.
That's right. That's right. I think that is a misconception that, it's just for wartime
Yeah.
heroes
Yeah.
or whatnot. And no, PTSD affects everybody. And what's going to affect you and the severity of your issue, it's different for everyone. That level at
Yeah.
which you can cope. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And having that complex part was learning that that complex PTSD is from ongoing traumatic childhood events. And it's like, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah. Imagine that was
Yeah,
a big relief. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Now, you also write about building a healthy life with your husband and family. How did those new relationships help you relearn what trust and love could look like?
My husband, a wonderful man, showed me support. He listened, he cared, and he loves me unconditionally.
Mm.
And he and his family are the ones that showed me what a loving family is, and that you always stick together, like, throughout the good and the bad. You come together in all the happy moments and the sad moments. It was all about sticking together and having trust in each other.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love that. I love happy endings. Of course, everybody loves happy endings, but
Exactly.
it's oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, look, they showed me what family is.
Yeah.
You know, that they just yeah, they're the ones that showed me what family is. And my friends that I have in my life showed me what their family, that family is as well. So it's just having that, being around the good people.
Yeah. Surrounding yourself
Yeah.
with people that you love and love you. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yes.
Now, forgiveness, it's a bit complicated in your memoir. It's not neat or easy. How do you define forgiveness today? And how has that definition kind of changed over time?
Well, forgiveness is a strong, complicated word for me. Still, as I don't forgive those who've treated me so badly.
Mm.
But for me, I can move forward without them in my life. They don't deserve my time or my space.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. That's how I
Uh,
see it as. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
forgiveness is a big thing for me. Yeah, yeah, they talk about, you can forgive them for yourself, but I still struggle with that.
Yeah, I imagine so. I mean, people say forgive but not forget. But
Mm.
if you're not forgetting, are you really forgiving? I don't.
Exactly, exactly. That's exactly how that's how I perceive it as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Shattered Child highlights ways in which children kind of fall through the cracks of systems that were meant to protect them. If you could send one message to child welfare professionals today, what would it be?
Well, my message would be, remember that behind every file is a child with hope, fears, and potential. Your ability to listen, advocate, and act with compassion can be the difference between a child being lost in the system or being found, heard, and healed. Never underestimate the impact of showing up. That's all I'd wished I ever had for the fails in the system, was for them to show up,
Mm,
because it didn't happen all the time.
wow.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't even know what to say to that because it's like the very people charged with keeping you safe and protected. Ugh, so
It
frustrating.
failed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it failed. It failed majorly, and I learn more and more each day. About the failures in the system and that it still happens. So it's just be there. Little ones have nobody. They just
Yeah.
need support. Yeah,
And it's a job, yeah, but it's so much more than a job. I mean, you're dealing with people's lives, so it's not your
exactly.
typical 9 to 5 go into the office kind of job. It's much more than that.
No, no, and that's very much how it used to be. I hope that there's change happening now, but I think it's
Yeah.
a long way off too.
Yeah. Many survivors battle with feelings of shame and guilt, emotions you explore very candidly in your memoir. What would you say
Hmm.
to readers who might see pieces of their own experiences in your story?
For starters, I would say to readers, I'm sorry that you had those experiences. And I hope what you take away from this story is to never give up, to speak out, to seek support. Yeah,
Yeah. You talked a
yeah,
little bit about, well, you talked about how complicated forgiveness was to you. And
yeah.
you also show that healing doesn't mean erasing your past. You obviously can't do that. But how have you learned to live with your story without letting it define who you are?
Well, I'm going to say just that some days it can be hard. Healing isn't linear, and my story of childhood can sometimes come crashing down on me. But I reach out for my tools, such as, talking to a friend, spending time with my husband, going to the pool, or simply just taking some deep breaths. And also having my therapist is great as well. So just doing the things that make me feel at peace, feel happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
How did your
yeah.
family feel about your book when it first came
They're
out?
proud. They're so proud. And I'm continually hearing how proud they are of me. But my children especially, they're like, "Mum, you needed to do this."
Oh, wow. I love that.
Yeah. Look, my children are adults and they can see, that they finally understand as well. And they're like, "Yeah, you needed to do this. We're really proud of you."
Oh, good. That's so wonderful. I
Mm.
love that.
Yeah.
I feel like despite all the heartbreaking moments, Shattered Child ultimately leaves readers with the message of hope. We've talked about hope. Uh, what is the biggest lesson that you hope people take away from reading your story?
It's never too late to speak your truths, that you're never alone in this world. There is always somebody there to be there if you need them. Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of
Yeah.
feedback have you had from readers? Have you had people reach out to you about your story?
Yeah, so I've had a couple of people reach out, and one just said she herself was a survivor and that she was so glad that I was speaking out because she wasn't able to do that. She's not able to do that, so she's really proud that one of us is doing that. It was really nice to get that message.
Yeah. I feel like if even just one person responds to your book like that, that it was worth
Yeah,
writing. I mean,
exactly.
obviously you wrote it for yourself, um,
Hmm.
but for others too. And I would call it a success. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So when did your book come out?
So the book actually came out at the beginning of March, and yeah, it's available on Amazon and other various platforms. So that's obviously paperback and hardcover and Kindle. So, and I do believe it's available on like Barnes and Noble and a few other platforms.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And do you have a website where readers can go and learn more?
Yeah, so I've got it. It is www.sumiefilmerauthor.com. It is live, but I'm still navigating the website myself. I've never done my own website,
Ah,
so still navigating that one.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. But one of the many part-time jobs of being an author. Now you got to learn how to do this. Now you got to learn how to do that.
Yes, yes. And I do have Instagram and Facebook as well. Shattered Child, Instagram and Facebook.
Okay. Okay. Great. So what's next for you? Do you think you'll write another book or is this it for you?
No, so what's next for me? Well, I'm actually busy with writing my next book. So I feel like, well, there is more to the story, and which happens many years later after a teenager. But yeah, I'm going to start writing that book. I've already
Okay.
written a couple of pages. But once I've got some upcoming book launch events happening here in where I live in Australia, and yeah, see what happens. But the second book is about seeking justice.
Ooh, okay, nice.
Yes,
Oh, I'm going to
yes.
stand in line to read that one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's all about finding my voice in this world. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's so important. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Sumi, is there
Mhm.
anything else you wanted to add today?
Oh, I think that's been good.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah.
Just read the
Okay.
book. Read the book.
Read the book, of course. That's why we're
Read the
here.
book.
So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, Sumi, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing about your experiences. It was very eye opening and enlightening, and I admire your courage so much for writing it. And thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today for my interview with Sumie Filmer, author of Shattered Child. Learn more about Sumie and her work at sumiefilmerauthor.com. And be sure to check out our other interviews at InsideScoopLive.com.